Welcome to a presentation on Federal Special Education Indicator 13, which covers secondary transition. So what is Indicator 13? Indicator 13 checks to see whether Massachusetts students with Individualized Education Programs, or IEPs, who are age 14 and above, receive secondary transition planning and services that comply with the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. IDEA transition planning and services are mandated in several federal regulations, which are outlined here on this slide. Massachusetts state law requires that transition planning and services begin no later than the student's 14th birthday, 2 years earlier than the federal requirement of age 16. Therefore, Massachusetts uses age 14 for the Federal Indicator 13 review. How does Massachusetts collect the Indicator 13 data? Each year, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, requires Massachusetts districts to review a sample of files for students with IEPs who are age 14 and above, using a checklist with Indicator 13 requirements. The result of these file reviews are used in a federally required calculation to determine the statewide percentage rate for Indicator 13 compliance. Because this is a measure of compliance, the federal government requires a target of 100% compliance. How is the Indicator 13 statewide compliance rate measured? The state uses the percentage of youth with IEPs ages 14 and above with an IEP that includes the appropriate measurable post-secondary goals that are annually updated and based upon an age-appropriate transition assessment, transition services, including courses of study that will reasonably enable the student to meet those post-secondary goals, annual IEP goals related to the student's transition service needs, evidence that the student was invited to the IEP team meeting when transition services are to be discussed, and evidence that, if appropriate, a representative of any participating agency that is likely to be responsible for providing or paying for transition services, including, if appropriate, pre-employment transition services, was invited to the IEP team meeting with the prior consent of the parent or student who has reached the age of majority. Why is Indicator 13 important? Indicator 13 is one way that Massachusetts ensures that schools and districts comply with federal and state special education law. If students with IEPs have compliant secondary transition planning and services, they are more likely to have positive outcomes in post-school, high school education and training, employment, independent living, and community participation. Indicator 13 also helps DESE to understand which schools and districts may need additional professional development and other resources to support students' secondary transition needs. This slide lists additional resources, both on secondary transition and Indicator 13.